And we are recording. Welcome, everyone. This is your host, Abraham El Jaguar, a professional game master. Today we have a very special guest, but before that, this channel is proudly sponsored by the following publishers, starting with Mythos Games and the Eros Engine core rulebook. This is a standalone tabletop role-playing game, but also works as an add-on for any other tabletop RPG. It is heavily focused on passion, romance, and the physicality of intimate encounters. Definitely check it out. Next, we have Dead Tree Studios, the publishers and developers of Dames of Asstoria, a tabletop role playing game where you play as monster girls experiencing high adventure in a world that doesn't fully accept them. They have also released the Pay What You Want tabletop RPG, Daughters of Lamb, where you get to play as cybernetic nuns with guns, looking for the missing pieces of their AI god. And then we have the Red Room Publishing. Please check out their store for exclusive tabletop RPG products. And check out their free tabletop RPG, the Red Roleplaying Game. A generic system that can handle any sort of theme, genre, flavor, setting that you can think of. Definitely check it out. All of the links to these amazing publishers will be in the description and in the pinned comment as well. So today we are having a conversation featuring mythology and tarot with Dokkaebi Elvira. Elvira, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invite. So, hello everyone, this is Elvira. I'm the Korean Dokkaebi, if anyone knows. So nice to be here today.
For those of you that do not know, the Dokkaebi is a bit like a Korean goblin. Am I correct, Elvira?
Yes, you're correct. Basically, I think for Europeans or Americans, Goblin would be the closest creature. For either Japanese or Chinese, the Japanese Onis are kind of similar also.
I'm always a bit fascinated because of the categories of supernatural beings in the East. Here in the West, we tend to be very specific, but in the East, you have
Hmm.
like very general categories. In the case of the Japanese, they have like the yokai, right? And they have so many creatures within that category.
Yes, that's true.
In Korea, do you have like a similar category, a term similar to yokai?
Yes, we actually do share kind of similar names. In Japanese, it's yokais. In Koreans, it's called yoge. So, as you can see, the pronunciations are nearly the same. And yes, in Korea, we also divide things into yoges or some youngmurs in case. So, yoges are more like dangerous, unknown, like it might be harmful to humans. But youngmurs are, on the other hand, are very helpful to humans and are very nice.
So you could say that in Korean mythology and folklore, there isn't like a predominancy of good or evil. That is, you have all sorts of creatures that have good or bad intentions.
Oh, yes, they're all mixed up in Korea. There are some creatures that are like 100% bad, for sure. But most of them, they kind of show both sides, either good or bad, or both scenes. So you can't really say, oh, they're always bad, or oh, they're always good.
That's an interesting point. In Korean mythology, do you have some sort of creation story or legend like this is how our land came to be and such?
Yes, we do. And it's kind of interesting because the Koreans believe that the start of Korea was made by a god who came down to the land after seeing the humans suffering on our land by like either short of food or having some difficulties in hunting. So the god that came down from the sky is called Hwanu. So he decided to take care of the humans, and one day, one tiger and a bear came up to him, and then they told the Hwanung that they would also be they also want to be a part of his people. So they wanted to be a human. So the task he gave was if they go into a cave and survive 100 days with only onions and garlic. I know that's tough. That's even tough
Uh-huh.
for, I think, humans. So the tigers failed, but the bear survived. So it turned out into a beautiful woman. And then that woman married Hwanu and they had a son named Tangun. And that Tangun became the leader of the entire humans that live in Korea. So the Koreans believe that that's how the entire land started.
So you could say that like a true Korean is somewhat half bear,
Yeah, that's true.
half deity.
The half bear, half human is kind of how we started off.
Mm. That is very interesting because there are several cultures that give great importance to bears. Like
Hmm.
in Japan, the Ainu also hold the bear in a certain reverence, and even in the Western world, on the part of the Germanic tribes, they also the berserkers. You know the bear
Yeah,
skins, those warriors.
bears do appear a lot, I
Hmm.
think.
So that's a very interesting link. And if there is like a bad guy, like a group of really bad beings in Korea, in Korean mythology, so, something similar to demons, what would you call them?
Something similar to demons. We usually call it akri, so it's like a demonic creature, more of a demonic ghost.
Mm-hmm.
So a ghost that's evil to humans, we usually call them akri들. So for example, if you guys saw the Korean demon hunters, the K-pop demon hunters, if I remember the name correctly,
Mm-hmm.
the Saja boys over there, they're also akki. So like
Mm-hmm.
an evil spirit. So
Mm-hmm.
Koreans mostly believe that they're spirits instead of like creatures. Although there are some creatures in Korea, we usually talk about ghosts and spirits a lot.
And do you have, like you said, like a certain uh, group of people or caste of people that are kind of like exorcists or people that fight these evil spirits in mythology?
Yes, we do. So we have, in general, we usually call them budang, but actually budang is a name for only women's, and the mans are called paksu. So overall, they're called paksu budang. So it's more like witch and wizards in the European culture,
Mm.
but a bit
And
of
what is the
difference. Hmm.
what is the source of power for these wizards and sorcerers? How are they able to use their magic or something like that?
So the Paksu Budang don't really have any special powers themselves. They're able to communicate with the dead, so with the spirits, and then they have their own gods that came came to them or like borrows their body. So they're kind of the tunnel or the way the gods communicate with humans.
Mm. Like conduits.
Yet that's very similar.
Um, mhm. And how did you become so fascinated with mythology? Well, I imagine you like mythology because otherwise you wouldn't be talking about it, right?
That's true. So first of all, as I explained, I am a Dokkaebi myself, so I do know a lot of myself, like about my friends somehow, I'll say. And then apart from that, as I go over the Korean history, although I was there sometimes, I wasn't because I was kind of sleeping. So it's interesting how people are so close to those creatures, even though some believe and some do not. There's always a story that creatures help people or harm people, and it's actually left out as an official document of the empire. So, not only about the words that people talk, like about, oh, there's a story of one girl who just disappears someday. It's not only like that, but there's official documents from the palace and from the kings that said, so on whatever date there was this problem, and everyone who saw that called it a fox. But when we went after that, it just transformed into a human and disappeared. So there are some official documents, and that's how I actually started to look up some stories about ourselves.
It looks like you have many beings that transform or shapeshift, correct?
Yeah, we do have some shapes shifting, I think. So the most popular one is about the nine-tailed fox. Usually come out as a beautiful woman, but sometimes a man, not that often. But the nine-tailed fox usually has a story about being such a beautiful woman, just charms every guys, and then takes them away and kind of eat them up. I know that's tough, but also Dokkaebis also have some stories related, like this, if you can see. hmm So for myself, I don't really transform that much, but so yes, we do have some by ourselves. So Dokkaebis, in case to talk more about us, we usually have some stories about Dokkaebis are made from long used items such as old brooms or usually old brooms because broom was one of the objects that was used a lot in the past. Not really nowadays because it's so cheap you don't use it that long. Just buy a new one if it gets old. So no more Dokkaebis really. But in the past, yes, Dokkaebis also transform, but the nine-tailed fox are the popular ones.
It's interesting because here in the West, brooms are also featured in various like magical and folklore traditions, especially related to witches. But I
hmm
think in Japan they also have a similar concept, right? Of the objects that come to life in some way. So it's interesting how Korea, Japan, and even some parts of the West share that concept.
that's really interesting because different cultures. Some are close, some are far away, but we kind of share some similar stories around.
hmm Do you have many stories about giants in your mythology?
Giants, we don't really have a lot of stories about giants, but we do have one very famous story about the Jeju Island. The Jeju Island is a familiar place in Korea also, like even nowadays. There's a mythology about that calling 설문 대할망, and people believe that that one great god helped humans to kind of form a bridge and to place rocks and form a bridge by that. But somehow, while she was moving the rocks, her skirt just got too old and the rocks just dripped into the ocean, and that rocks formed an island. And Jeju was actually a place for her to use as a pillow. So we and yeah, the giant part because she was so huge, like huge, massive. That was how she was able to use an island as a pillow. But apart from that story, we don't really have much about giants. But I think it's because Korea is such a small country, it's hard to have stories about giants.
There weren't too many giants around.
But I think there are kind of lots of stories about giants in the Western culture, isn't it?
Yes, yes, and some of them are have become really popular lately. Like for example, let me show you this image right here. Mm-mm. It's. Are you familiar with Attack on Titan, the anime?
Yeah, I did see that.
You're probably familiar with this image, right, of the giant of the Titan.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, this is actually the image a Mexican giant because here in this
Oh,
Mexican image, do you see it?
oh, it's very similar.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Because the giants that the Mexicans fought were supposed to be also like with the muscles exposed and all that. So I'm always interested to find more clues about the mythological giants. Really?
That's amazing.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Now, when it comes to tarot, do
Hmm.
you read tarot or do you go to get readings and such?
I do read tarots by myself, and I do use specialized tarot cards for. It contains pictures of Korean cultures,
Mm-hmm.
so I do use that, and I read it myself. I'm not really sure if I'm that good at it, but I do read tarots for my friends and families. Yeah, so were you also interested in tarots? Like, do you read them often or go
Yeah,
get
since I was
readings?
like 14 years old, more or less. Mm-hmm.
Mm,
But I guess I became fascinated as to how exactly the cards work, because I always saw these readings, and some of them were very. I would say most of the readings were very accurate. So I was like, how does this work exactly? So I think part of the mystery as to how the cards are able to predict some things are what attracted me to them. And in your case, how did you become interested with the cards?
so, yeah, first of all, tarot cards were actually very easy to get started for me. It was not that, like, oh, it's very hard to start. You need to do something, something, and something. It was, you only need your cards to start off. So, yeah, that's how I actually got interested in it. And also the part of some, it kind of looks mystical. Like, how does the card know what situation you're in, and how does it know that your future is going to work out? So that
Have you
part
ever given some
started.
thought to that as to how they work?
Yeah, I did think about it, but I wasn't really sure. However, like after I thought, I was like, maybe it's just like some, there's spirits, there's Dokkaebis, there's whatever creatures. So maybe it's somehow like you just get attracted to some cards, like, oh, I think I need to pick that one up. And then it just tells you.
I'm a 43 years old guy, and even to this day, like I've never found like a straight answer. But the closest theories that I have encountered, and some of them like I reasoned myself, is that first, like you said, it could be something spiritual. Could be either that some sort of being is speaking through the cards, or that the cards became alive somehow. But
Hmm.
it could also be more a more, how you say, mundane explanation that the patterns of the cards, they are like. It's about pattern recognition. Your mind starts to go through the cards, and some part of your intelligence, your intellectual process, starts to predict things based on a particular model presented by the cards.
Mm,
So it's like a sort of super intelligence that activates, and you start to predict things.
yeah,
But like
like
I
the
said,
sixth sense. I
there
think
is
that also
no.
makes sense.
hmm I have yet to find like a straight answer. I think it's more like a combination. It could be a combination of many things, because there are some things that are predicted that make no sense. Like when someone starts to describe the relative of someone else, and that something is going to happen to that relative, be it a good thing or a bad thing, and it occurs, it makes you fascinated that wow, there is no rational explanation as to how such a thing could have been predicted.
Hmm. That might be true, because like people say, oh, humans might have the sixth sense where you can just feel things. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
all those and the patterns behind the cards also affect. But yeah, I don't think there's any clear explanations about how tarot cards work, are there? Like, we don't really know. But the
Mm-hmm.
predictions are kind of fun. Like, oh, maybe this is the reason why, or maybe that's the reason why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It could also be that, for example, neuroscientists have been doing some studies on the human mind, and
Hmm.
they actually discovered that if you accumulate 2 hours of silence a day, that is, you don't have to be like 2 hours of silence straight. Like it could be like bits of silence throughout the day. Your mind actually benefits from that. Even they have even seen neurons being formed or regenerated just by remaining in silence at the very least 2 hours a day.
That's amazing. because I didn't really know about that.
So it made me think about tarot because sometimes when you are coming up with the meanings for the cards, you're staring at the cards and you are in silence thinking about the meaning.
Hmm. You need to think about what the card's trying to say and connect the meanings of the cards that you picked up. Because most of the times when you read tarot cards, it's not only one card that you're looking at, but like three, five, or seven, sometimes nine, 11. So, like, matching all those stories up and providing a meaning of the cards might also help in developments.
You know what's also very tricky, like the meaning of the positions of the cards, because
Hmm.
when I first started to learn tarot a few decades back, I was thinking, like this position means message, but also brother or sister, and this
Mm,
position means money, but it could also be about owning something or someone. So you have so many meanings, and if you don't, how you say, if you over rationalize, you can get lost as to what exactly the cards mean in that position, don't you think?
yeah, that's so true. Because one card, like even one card, can have so many other meanings depending on the situation that you are in. So when you're reading the cards, it's really important to check out the situation you're in or you might be in so you can actually see what the cards is trying to tell you.
And I think that the images also help a lot. Like you not
Hmm.
only have
It
to
does.
consider the meaning, but the images of the cards themselves, right?
Sometimes the image like directly shows you, just like the tower card. There's a lightning just striking down the tower, and it usually means like an end, or sometimes it does mean a new start, a fresh new start. But most of the times that card is used for not good things. So the drawings does help.
It almost feels like your mind is probing, like waiting for the right answer. Like you're looking through the meanings,
Hmm.
like tower, and then nothing. You don't feel anything, and suddenly you come up with radical transformation, and you hear like this ding 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 ding. That's the.
It just pops out in your mind. Hmm.
In Korea, do you have like a traditional divination method that is apart from tarot as more on the Western side? Do you have something that is specifically of Korean folklore or
Um,
culture?
it's not only limited to Korea, but places like Korea, China, or I think Japan's also included. But we do have something called saju. So it contains your birthday, year, and the time that you were born. And then by that we find out which of the five elements that you consider the like you contain the most. And those five elements are fire, wind, water,
Earth?
soil, and
Hmm.
gold.
Gold. Oh, that's
Mhm.
very interesting. Hmm.
So gold usually means like steel or some metals. It usually goes as metals. So I'm not a really expert in Saju, but it tells you like, oh, because you have more water than fire, you might be a calm person, like with less rage. But you need to be careful that you need to take care of people near you and just not focus on what you're doing. So it kind of tells you stuff like that. But because it contains things like your birthday, year, or time that cannot be changed, it's kind of fixed. So for tarots, you just check it out whenever you have new questions. But Saju, it's more like if you check it once, then there won't be much change when you check it next time.
It's a bit similar to Western numerology that you also
Yes.
factor in the name,
Hmm.
the birth date. Mm. But it's also very fascinating that the four elements, well, in your case, five elements, play such an important part in divination because, in tarot, you also have the wands that are fire, the swords
Uh-huh.
that are air, pentacles, soil, or earth, and the cups that are water.
So that's like the funny part where tarots are usually from the western side and sajus are from usually the Asian side, but they kind of share the similar things like the elements or the meanings. So even if in the tarot cards when it comes out like pentacles, it usually means something good.
Hmm.
And like kind of the soil is like, oh, you're gonna be stable or something. So
and
it's funny
and it
how
makes
things get
sense.
along.
Hmm. It could be that the tarots like they got influence from both the east and the west because many like point out that they were a bit on the Italian side, but Italy also had a lot of exchange with the east,
That's
so
true.
it could be like it was the merging of both cultures.
So that's yeah, that's like the funny part there.
Hmm. And when it comes to tarot, have you ever been surprised yourself, or have you been surprised by some reading like, oh, it was so accurate?
Yes, I did because one time, I'm not sure if I can tell this on stream, but whatever. So one time, my friend asked me if I could read some tarots for her and guess like where the next place that she'll end up. Like she had some choices, but it was kind of random, so we didn't know where she's gonna be going. So I did go over the reading for her, and then the card said, "Oh, it would be." So we had like five choices from A to E. The card was like, "Well, A kind of seems okay, but no, you're gonna be B. Like B's the best choice for you." And actually, B was the place that she wanted to go. And I was like, "Yeah, but the card says the B's the best choice, and you there's like a high chance of you going there." And then she actually ended up there.
Mm.
I was like, "You actually went there?"
And probably a bit out of her control, right? It's not like she made the choice to go there.
Yeah, because it was a thing that she couldn't really choose. It was random. So she still wanted to check, like, I want to go there, so can you, like, check if I can, if there's any possibilities? And the card said, yes, there's a high chance of you going there. And she actually did. So, yeah, that's the fun part.
That also happens to me. It happened to me several times. That sometimes, for example, the other day, a friend was asking me for a reading because she was having some difficult situations at work. And then I started to read what I saw on the cards, and I told her, well, you see, there is this very like short woman. She's a bit stocky. She has this black hair tied in a
Hmm.
ponytail. She has glasses, and she's like, "No, I don't know anyone by that description." And oh yeah, it appears here that you know about her. No, no, no. And I was like, she's going to come and help you with that situation. And about a week and a half later, it was like a very old friend of hers that had changed her look completely. So now she looked like that, and she actually helped her with the situation at work.
Oh
So
my
so it's
god.
funny. Like I said, I was just imagining the person, and it ended up that being exactly like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. You know what I also like when they use tarot in video games like Persona. Have you seen
Mm,
those games?
no, I haven't saw them actually. That sounds
Ah.
nice that you can use tarot games and videos. Like,
In
hmm.
various ways, like in the case of Persona, which is a very popular RPG, of course, each card is tied to one of the characters. So usually the main character is represented by the Fool, because as you know in Tarot, the
Oh,
Fool
uh-huh.
has so many possibilities. It is the zero card going on your journey, sometimes foolishly,
Hmm.
because you are the Fool. And that is also the most versatile card because the Fool has to go through the entire journey. So you could say that the Fool is the archetype in the video game with the most potential.
That's amazing. Maybe I should
Hmm.
try that game someday.
They have a lot of huge series. You can start with there are so many Persona games, but for as personal recommendation, I would
Hmm.
recommend Persona 3. Persona
Hmm.
3, they have even released Persona Reloaded, but that's what got me into Persona.
Sounds amazing.
Hmm. And when it comes to tarot in Korea, is it also employed as some sort of part of magical or ritual practices?
Not really, because for actually the ritual, we have a traditional ritual things as the paksumudang. So whenever like you have really hard time, people usually go for them instead of reading tarots. So for Korean people, tarots are more like, oh, I'm kind of bored right now, and I just have this random question in my mind. Should I try it? That kind of questions usually people work with tarots. But for questions like, okay, I need to move my company, or like, I need to change my working status, or like, I'm gonna move my company, but I'm not sure if I'm going the right way, then people usually go find the Paksubudang. And even if when the new year comes up, people go see them to just check out how their ears are gonna be going.
Mm. So it's more related to like interaction with spirits and gods, would you say?
Yes, because most of the time the spirits that the Paksumudang are telling is mostly like your ancestors.
Mm.
So in Korea, there's a really strong traditional thing with our ancestors. We just set up a table with some foods and stuff to just for them, like for the ancestors who's already dead, and just
How
pray
often
for
do you
them.
do that? How often do you set up
Um,
the table for?
it
Yeah.
really depends. For me, I don't because well, I'm not a human,
Mhm.
and then but sometimes like there's people who do them at least twice a year. Um, so twice a year, it's one in New Year and one in the Chuseok, which is a very important day for us. But some people also take it on their the day that they passed away. For example, if someone's grandfather passed away 2 weeks after, then they just set up a table for the grandfather only after 2 weeks.
Mm,
So it
that's
really
very
depends on the family.
that's very interesting because are you familiar with here in Mexico the Day of the Dead, Dia de los
Mm-hmm.
Muertos?
Mm-hmm.
We also have the table, the it's called the Altar of Muertos, the altar of the dead, and it's also a table with food that you set up for the for whatever relative that died, ancestors and such.
So for the table in the Mexico, are the foods like fixed or does it change every year? It
Well, it
just
depends. There are
depends.
some traditional things, like for example, the traditional thing is using like sugar skulls. Although I always say,
Mm.
what? You're going to give them sugar skulls? Sugar is very unhealthy. Don't give them that, you know. But we have the sugar skulls, and we also have like oranges. Some people even set up tacos, like traditional Mexican food. But it depends on the family, yeah.
Oh, because in Korea we have something called 홍동백서. So it means like red on the left, white on the right, if I'm remembering correctly. Oh, sorry, I
Ah,
think it's the opposite way.
mhm.
Yeah, I haven't set up a table for quite long. So we usually have some rice, uh, something, yeah, rice, a soup, fruits, some meat, fish, and yeah, and then some vegetables. Those are kind of like the ordinary setup, but it kind of depends on the family. Some might have more, some might have less.
I forgot to mention that we also have this bread that is called bread of the dead or pan de muertos. It's basically like a typical bread bun, but it is covered with like little hard bread bones, a bit like cookie bones, and you eat
Um,
them as if you are sharing the meal with your ancestor or anyone that
Ancestors.
passed away.
That's nice. I think like having like eating the table after everything finishes are kind of similar. because that also happens in Korea.
And there is a bit how you say not every Mexican family practices that. It depends. For example, in my case, I don't do it because there is no guarantee that the ancestor is going to eat that food. You can place the picture or image of the ancestor, but somebody else could go in there and take the food. And supposedly, according to the superstition, if they take some other spirit takes the food, it could get the energy to do mischievous or bad things on your house.
Well, in Korea, we don't really have any stories about someone else can take the food and then be strong, but we're mostly like, well, some people still believe that the ancestors come and eat the food, and then when the ancestor eat the food gets better, like it gets more delicious.
Mm.
So some believes it, some are just like, well, the ancestors are important, but what's more important is people are alive, so we just need to spend some time with our family because a lot of things changed as now we're in a modern world. We have all this internets and whatever. But like before, back into history, just like the Joseon dynasty, if you don't do that, then you're such a bastard. Like, if you
Mm.
don't do that, then you're just like not respecting your ancestors, not respecting your family. But it was kind of a culture back then, but now it's just like, yeah, do what you want.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I think it's also important to know that a lot of cultures, even some in the East, believe that the ancestors reincarnate in their descendants, correct?
Yeah, we do also believe in reincarnation, but it's not really like directly you're gonna be born as your descendant. It's more like, well, if you did good, then you might just reincarnate as a human and get a new life. But as we also believe in hell, if you do something bad, then yes, you're gonna go to hell. You're gonna get punishments. So like the hell in Korea might be different from other countries because in Korea we believe that there's 7 different hells. So you go to each one depending on the fault you make, and you get different punishments. Hmm. That's the fun part.
And also fascinating as well because in the West we have 9 levels of hell. Well, depending on the
Oh,
tradition, and also tied to different scenes, like the betrayers, they are the worst. They go to the ninth level where everything is frozen, or you did this other thing. Oh, you go to the fifth level and such.
that's it's so funny how like different cultures, but still kind of the similar stories.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think it's mostly related to like bits of history that are very mysterious, that are usually not very communicated in the mainstream
Hmm.
for various reasons. Because, for example, what would you say if I were to tell you that Mexico and Rome are very much related? It sounds very difficult to believe, right?
Well, Mexico and Rome, yeah, that sounds far away.
Aha, now take a look at this. This is the things that blow the minds of people. Let me show you this image over here. Mm-mm-mm. These Mayan sculptures from Mexico, well, the jars and vases and the Roman design. Take a look at it. They are the same. And if
They're
you
the same.
exactly, it is called Solomon's knot. But if you take a look at the armor of the warriors in Mexico and in Rome, very much the same as well. So there are
Well,
some ties, some cultural ties from way in the past. So I sometimes wonder if even distant cultures like Korea, were in the past had some strong ties to other countries or other nations, right?
um, well, in Korea, as the Korean history has lots of invasions from nearby countries like China or Japan, especially
Mm-hmm.
Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. So yes, we do share some stories and some cultures. So like Now the Dokkaebis nowadays got a lot of influence of the Japanese onis,
Hmm.
so it's really easy to just like think they're alike, although there are some clear differences. But some words like yokais and yogues are also very similar. But yes, I think the China, Korea, and Japan does share some similar things.
And I think it's good that we talk about such differences because, for example, for decades here in the West, there was a bit of how you say we got our views distortioned by propaganda. Like they used to tell you, no, you know what, Korea is like it used to be Japan, but they just separated. But then you start to see like the important differences between the nations.
Such a lie.
Hmm. But that's what the views that we get sometimes because of the official history books. So it's much better to always like think with critical thinking and start to see
Hmm.
things as they are.
Well, yeah, it's true that some people still say that Korea is like the time when Korea was under Japan, like when it was being ruled by Japan, was the best time, and I think that's a complete nonsense. Well, as a Korean, because you won't say that to some people that was ruled by the British Empire and go like that.
Hmm.
See, that's not working as a Korean.
Yeah, I think all nations are affected by that because, for example, in Egypt, you have the fact that some pharaohs they took over various pyramids constructs and they
Hmm.
actually erased the names of the original builders and then they placed their own names. No, no, no! I built that structure. Like
Yeah.
the great pharaoh built this structure.
So yeah, that's important. But like history changes as time goes. Some histories are lost, some are found.
You
I
can never
think
be
that
certain
that happens.
what is history and what is his story, right?
Yeah, so true. So just you can't believe every single words that people say. But there are still some official documents. So for Korea, we used to have kings, like we used to be ruled by kings, like an empire. But
Hmm.
we have like an official documents written by the writers that were in the palace. Like for example, there's a story of a Joseon king. He fell off a horse while going out hunting, and then because he was so embarrassed, he told the recorders like, "Don't record that on the book." But they're like, "Oh, he fell off the horse." And because he was embarrassed, he told us not to record it. That's actual record that's left for us right now. So those might be some like recordings that we can believe, but still, as the history are written by the winners, the actual history might be different.
It's like in England. What was it? William the Conqueror. In one of the battles, he fell off his horse, but
Hmm.
according to official history, he did that to kiss the land, and rose up and he said, "Now that I have kissed the land, we cannot lose in this battle." But he probably just fell, and they just
That's
changed that.
that's how the history is written down by the one who has the power.
I can already imagine him writing, "No, no, 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 erase that. Change it to I did this instead." You know.
Mhm. Change it to a story that I look awesome.
Uh-huh. Speaking of awesome, do you have some notable heroes in your Korean mythology?
Um, I do have a story of a guy, a very amazing guy. His name is Hong Gil-dong. Because he's so famous, like he's still used as an example. Like his name's just like an example for like, oh, just write down your name where it says Hong Gil-dong over there. So he was an amazing guy. He stole the rich from the rich people, like some gold, money, and he just gave it to the poor. But he was very hard to catch because when the cops, like the police, finds him and then chases him, he just disappears randomly. Even though it's a dead end, he just vanishes. So that's how he was never actually caught.
Sounds like a special ops or ninja type of hero.
Hmm. So he's famous because he stole some goods from the rich and just shared it with the poor without getting any benefits. There is an actual history of a guy named Dong, and he was also an amazing thief, according to the record. So the story of the guy Dong that the Koreans know might be based off the real person, who was also an amazing thief. But you know the truth. We don't know the truth. It's just a story.
There are a lot of stories of heroic thieves, right? Here in the
Hmm.
West, we have Robin Hood, specifically in
Mm.
Europe, and in Japan. In Japan, I think it was I don't think I don't know if it was Doraemon, but there was also like a legendary thief. But I think that's an archetype, right? Like people always want to see those figures that take money from the corrupt and distribute
Hmm.
it to the less fortunate.
So I think people always wanted someone to like protect themselves or like just share the money with the poor or someone who takes care of themselves. Like not only taking care of the corrupted but also the ordinary peasants. Maybe that's what people actually wanted.
And of course those figures are usually very popular with the people, right? But not with
Hmm.
the actual rulers. Like for example,
Yep.
in Switzerland, they're going to tell you, "What William Tell? No, he was evil. Don't admire William Tell." But the rich are the ones who are going to tell you that. And in the case of if England, they say Robin Hood, but he
No,
probably
no, no,
never
no, no.
existed. Ignore various evidences. Just ignore him. That's not admirable.
That always happens. Every country.
Now, in your channel, you're going to be doing like videos focusing on mythology, correct?
Yes, so what I'm thinking is about some horror games and about mythology, especially Korean mythology. But also, I'm going to talk about some Korean culture and histories.
They should do more video games, specifically focused on Korea folklore, no? Don't you think?
Yeah, I do. Well, actually, there's a Korean video game, but I need just too many people to play that because it's not for one person. So maybe, yeah, maybe I'll share the game with you later on.
Hmm.
Because that's also a game really focused on Korean creatures. So yeah, that game seemed nice.
Yes, because sometimes I go through different YouTube videos of video games, various video games, and always people say like, oh, they are always using this culture or that culture. Why don't they explore this other culture? So I think it would be interesting if they were to put more emphasis on the various myths and legends of Korea. It could be like a ground that has not been further explored.
That's gonna be so nice. I wish more people like make some games related to Korean culture. But for now on, there's not so much, but there's still
Yes,
some amazing games.
I think it has a lot to do with what they think is marketable, right? Because, for
Hmm.
example, when there, well, even today, right? But the Japanese things, pretty much anything Japanese is very marketable, so they are constantly doing so many Japanese themed video games. And in the case of the West, it depends on the culture at the moment. Like, oh, right now, well, the U.S. you see a lot of influence in the case of United States culture, or if you're doing like a game of fantasy battles, you see a lot of Germanic mythology inserted as well. Even of course Thor being the most popular, but there are so many cultures in the world, so much richness to explore. Even though I like Thor and all of that, I think we have so many things that we could put our attention or focus on as well.
Yeah, that's true. I wish like there's more. I would love to introduce some Korean games, but most of the Korean games are just based on some modern things or even some future.
Hmm.
So not much of, oh, you can see some Korean culture here type of games.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I'm still trying to find some because there are definitely some amazing games. But yeah, I
And that's
wish
also
there's
an
more.
interesting thing to consider because the other time one of my viewers he told me, "Hey, what do you think about?" Well, he mentioned a certain group of people. What do you think about these people that are the creators of most of the Marvel superheroes? You know, Wolverine, Captain America,
Um,
etc. And I told him, well, I don't know if it's exactly their creations because many of them are archetypes. Like you see, Thor is pretty much the Germanic
mhm,
god or deity Thor. In the case of Wolverine, although he is a Canadian superhero, many of his traits are focused on the berserkers from the Vikings. And you see
mhm.
Black Panther, he is like an African hero. So I told him it's more like archetypes that go through time, through history. So I think it's also important to consider how those archetypes evolve as our civilizations move forward.
That's yeah, that's right. Things change, so things happen, things change. Some cultures get mixed up if, especially if like the countries are very close or like nearby to each other. So we can't really be certain like, oh, this is a new creation because there might be a story related to that character.
I also wonder, you know how in the West you have knights and in Japan you have the samurai. Is there a similar type of warrior in Korea?
In Korea, we have people called 무관. So those people are like the soldiers nowadays. They officially take a test from the king, such as like, what do they have? Like some basic reading writing skills, some command, how to use swords, running, and etc. And we also have a place called Podochang. That's more similar to the police nowadays instead of the soldiers. They
Mm.
just like take care of how things are going, but they're all focused near the palace for the king, not really for the peasants. And they all have the direct approval from the king to use the swords.
Ah, okay, okay. And do they also have to be to belong to certain like noble bloodlines and such, or anyone can
Not
join?
not really, no. Um, it's kind of restricted to people who has powers. So we have like the upperclassmen.
Mm-hmm.
So the lower classmen really don't have a choice but being a farmer.
Ah, okay.
So we
But
do have
that
some
sounds
different
fair.
classes.
That is, at least they are not restricted by their origin or heritage, right?
Yep, but the bad part is even if you're a peasant, if war happens that you need to be out fighting, so the noble soldiers won't be really protecting them
Oh, uh-huh.
because the soldiers in Korea, like in the back days, were mostly only for the upperclassmen, especially the king, like the royal
Mm,
bloodline.
I see.
Yeah,
So there was like a priority.
so that's why there's really a lot of stories about uh, 홍경래 and 인걱정 where they were actually peasants,
Hmm.
but they just become really good at fighting, so they just protect people with the power they have, even if they weren't really a noble blood.
I see.
Hmm.
Yes, it's sad how sometimes people forget their nobility. Like, for example, there is a very ridiculous story of, do you know? Well, he used to be Prince Charles, but now he's King Charles from England. Do you know him?
Yes, I do.
One of his butlers revealed, and this has been corroborated, verified by other people, that one time the butler was in the west side of the palace, and King Charles called him to walk all the way from the west wing to the east wing, because Your Highness couldn't kneel, bend to pick up a piece of paper and throw it in the trash. So yeah, imagine that.
Oh my god. Sounds awful.
And I consider it reprehensible because, for example, in my case, excuse me for a moment, let me show you. Um, I actually I am descended from a line of knights, Spanish knights, the
Oh
Cetina.
my god, that's so awesome.
Yeah, you can't. The focus is
Yeah,
failing me
yeah.
quite a bit, but yeah, that's the
Yeah, I can
family
still
crest.
see that. Oh my
So
god.
for me, it's for the family. It has always been the principle of noblesse oblige. Like any privileges that you obtain, you have to be grateful for those privileges, and if needed, you need to help the good people that are less fortunate. You need to
Hmm.
put yourself on the line because you are benefiting from various privileges.
That's amazing.
Hmm. That's why I was asking, like, oh, but is it also tied to a bloodline? But so it's good that anyone can more or less become one of those warriors. But yeah, they still give priority to the
Hmm.
higher ups, right?
There's always a priority.
Hmm. Well, this has been very enlightening. Before we wrap up the conversation, Elvira, do you want to add something else?
Um, there's not much to say. Oh, I just have last words that I wish people just have some more interest in Korean culture because as they go on, the history of Korea is kind of long and it also has some very interesting stories. And for myself, I would also be trying to bring up some interesting stories for everyone to keep them entertained.
If there are game developers, movie producers watching this video or whatever, explore Korean culture and mythology. There's
Yep. Please
there's
try
ripe
them.
ground to explore with your creations.
They
So
are amazing, guys.
mhm. Thank you, Vera, for sharing all of this with us.
Yep. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
And thanks to everyone who has been watching this recorded conversation. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Take a look at Dokkaebi Elvira's channel. The link is going to be in the description. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, consider joining as a member using the super thanks button. And yeah, take a look at the pinned comment, the description. This has been your host, Abraham L. Jaguar. And remember, roleplay solves everything. Once again, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording in 10 seconds.
Thank you.